Well, hello everybody and welcome to another episode. And I've been shooting a lovely camera this week, a very nice film rangefinder. It's this one, the Yashica ELECTRO 35GT. And this is not just one of the nicest film rangefinders that I've shot. It's not just one of the nicest film cameras that I've shot. I think it's one of the nicest cameras, film, digital, SLR, or any other kind that you care to name. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, it's got a fantastic style. I love the look of this camera. It's very, very simple and easy to use. And it's got a very nice, fast f1.7 Yashica lens, and together those things really make this into a very, very nice camera indeed. It's a consumer camera. It was marketed towards consumers. It wasn't really a professional machine, although professionals may have used it. Sorry about the wind noise, by the way, if there is any. It's a bit breezy here today. I believe that when it was new it cost around about £150 or something around that figure. Now they can be picked up for between £75 to £100, so they're pretty cheap as well. The layout of the camera is very simple. It's very simple to use. So there's the top plate, and you can see it's very nice and clean and clear and uncluttered. And what have we got on there? Well, we've got the wind on lever just here. We've got the shutter button, and then we've got an ISO dial, which on this camera goes from 25 to 1000 ISO, so it's fairly versatile in the film speed it will accept. I believe earlier versions of the ELECTRO 35 don't have quite as much ISO range on them. I think some of them go up only to 800, or maybe earlier ones 400. But this one, the GT, this one goes up to 1000, so it's pretty flexible in terms of film speed. We've also got under and over exposure lights on the top here, just there. Those are your main exposure guide on this camera. There's no light meter, just the lights to tell you if you're under or over, and they set the margins that you can work within. We've got a cold shoe, and then on the far left there, or your far right, I think it's your far right, screen right, we've got the rewind knob. So a very clear, very uncluttered top plate, nice and simple and easy to use. Now, I've used lots of film rangefinder cameras in the past, but all of them were either old 1930s Leicas or cameras based on that old design. So essentially, really, they were all 1930s technology, and so they were all manual in their exposure and their focus. This is the first rangefinder that I've used with auto exposure, and my goodness, does it make a difference. It really takes out an extra layer of complication and work and thought, and it's so nice not to have to think about exposure. This camera really lets you concentrate on your composition, on your subject, and it removes some of that complication between you and the final image. This camera really knows how to get out of its own way, and that's what I mean by simplicity of use. It's just incredibly simple to use, very, very easy to use. Just select your aperture, and as long as it's within the range of under or over exposure, then you're good to go. And it really has been quite a surprise how easy that makes things. This is a very, very simple camera to use. The focus ring is right next to the body, just where you need it, and it's got a very short throw of probably about a quarter of a turn or thereabouts. It really is a very short throw, and it's exactly what you need on a rangefinder when you've got the camera to your eye and you can make those small adjustments. So let me show you. Can I show you? There is the focus ring just there, and it's very, very easy to access with your fingers whilst you're shooting. So there we are. That's nice and simple, very accessible, just what you need on a rangefinder. The aperture ring is at the front of the lens, so it's right there, and again it's nice and easy to get to while you're shooting, very accessible, and that's what controls the aperture priority auto exposure. So when you're shooting, when you're selecting your exposure, just simply turn the aperture ring until you find the range of values that you can use using those under and over exposure lights. A really simple system and a very effective one too. The rangefinder patch in this camera is diamond shaped, and it's very clear and easy to see in the big bright viewfinder. If you're not sure what a rangefinder camera is, and of course many viewers will be clear on what that is, but some might not be, a rangefinder is a method of focusing. So a rangefinder camera is different to an SLR because you're not looking through the lens. You're actually, here's the viewfinder window, just let me show you, just here, that's the viewfinder window. So you look directly through that, and so you're not looking through the lens, and you're not looking directly through the same optics that you're going to shoot the photograph with. I'm glad to say this camera does have parallax correction. So what that means is there's a little window inside the viewfinder that shows you what the shot's going to be. That moves up and down as you move nearer and further away from your subject. So you get pretty accurate focusing on this camera. You're not really going to miss too many shots, and you're not going to cut too many people's heads off. That was a problem with the old rangefinders, the 30 style Leicas that I've used in the past, is that when you go close to your subject, you've no real way of knowing exactly how you're framed. So the danger is you're going to chop people's heads off if you're making a portrait. This one, I'm glad to say, has parallax correction, so that's not going to happen with this camera. You'll get a nice accurate shot. Now, because you're not looking through the lens and you're not seeing exactly what the lens sees when you're putting your shot together, you may think that a rangefinder focusing system might be inaccurate. Well, on this camera you need have no such fears. I got accurate focusing every shot. It really is quite amazing. Every single shot was spot on, and I didn't lose a single shot due to focusing errors. Now, I've had focusing errors with the older rangefinders that I've used. I've misfocused several times using film SLRs. Oh, noisy motorbike. I've missed focus even using digital mirrorless cameras and focus peaking systems, but on this camera I didn't miss focus once, and that really surprised me, and that is really quite an extraordinary achievement. This camera is how old? Gosh, over 40 years old. It's using very old technology, but that rangefinder focusing system works time after time. It's accurate, it's easy to use, and it really nails focus when you need it to. So absolute top marks for ease of focusing and for precision of focusing too. It was the same story with exposure too. I didn't miss a single shot, and this camera consistently gave me accuracy of exposure time after time. In fact, it gave me perfect results every time, and that really astonished me. It didn't just get it right, it got it perfect. I didn't miss a single shot due to incorrect exposure. It worked well in low light, it worked well in bright sunlight. Every time it gave me consistently good results. One of the nicest exposing cameras, the most consistently accurately exposing cameras that I've ever used. Top marks to Yashica once again. But maybe the best thing about this camera is its lens. This camera has a very fast, or pretty fast, f1.7 45mm, which is pretty close to my favorite focal length of 40mm Yashica lens, and it's a beauty. It's very sharp, even wide open. It gives you loads and loads of detail, and I was absolutely stunned by the sharpness of this lens, especially wide open. I've shot quite a few vintage lenses, mostly on mirrorless cameras, but also on film, and wide open they tend to be just that little bit soft. Well, this one, certainly shooting on film, I shot on Kodak Gold film, ASA 200. This one isn't. It's very sharp indeed, and of course you won't be able to shoot it at f1.7 all the time. You will have to stop it down a little, especially if you're shooting in bright light like it is today. But of course it only gets sharper once you stop it down, and it resolves even more detail. The blur it makes is really soft, really nice. I couldn't unsettle the blur. I couldn't find too many harsh spots, or indeed any harsh spots in the blur that it makes. It was consistently soft, and I find it very nice for portraits actually. If you're in fairly low light and you can open up that aperture, you get beautiful background blur with lots of separation between the subject and the background for a little bit of pop. And of course the fact that it's a fast lens means that it's good in low light. You can open up the lens and use this camera in situations where other film cameras would run out of light. You've got that one or two extra stops with this one to gather those extra photons that you need to light up the film and to expose it properly. There are lots of consumer rangefinders from the late 70s. They were quite a thing at the time, but very few of them have a lens as nice as this one, and when they do, they tend to be fairly expensive. So really this one is in a class of its own, I reckon. Now the lens on this camera of course is not interchangeable. You can't change it. That's the only one you've got, 45mm f1.7. You can't put any other lenses onto this camera. However, I think that's a good thing, because it means that you're going to be forced to work within those limitations, and limitations, in my view, enhance creativity. It's going to make you a better photographer, because you've got to work out ways to use what you've got to get the shot you want, or you've got to adapt your shooting style to a different kind of shot, and again that's enhancing your creativity. So this camera, I think, is a really good thing for developing your skills as a photographer. That beautiful lens is the icing on the cake on this camera. That lens makes a good camera fantastic. I reckon everything about this camera is right. It's got a fantastic look. It's nice and light to carry around. It's got that excellent exposure system. It's simple and easy to use, and it's got that outstanding lens. As for cost, well, I paid £75 for this one, and I reckon they range in price from, I don't know, around £75 to usually around 100, maybe a bit more, and you'll probably get one for less than 75 if you're patient. It's a great introduction to film if you haven't shot film before, or if you're familiar with film, if you're an experienced film user. Again, it's a fantastic camera to use, and it will get you accurate exposure and accurate focusing time after time after time, and most likely it won't let you down. A really nice camera, highly recommended. Coming up, we've got a very nice Minolta film SLR that I'm going to review very soon, and we've also got a review coming up of the Fujifilm X100T, that beautiful little camera from Fujifilm with the same sensor as the X Pro 1. And if everything comes together right, then I hope to bring you that next week. However, that is it for now from me, so please don't forget to like, subscribe and ring the bell before you go. And if you like the content on this show and you'd like to support it and help the channel to grow and develop, you can do that over at patreon.com/Zenography. And heartfelt thanks to all the support from patrons. Thanks to all the new patrons who've recently joined. It's really appreciated, and it's because of your support that this channel can keep doing what it's doing. So many thanks to patrons. So that's it from me this week. Join me next week for some more Zenography.